B-boy. From the old to the new, still a B-boy. Too bold for the school, still a B-boy. East Coast to the West, B-boys worldwide, we supposed to be blessed. Still a B-boy. From the old to the new, still a...
This week, we have someone special as my guest. For all you real hip-hop heads out there that want to see historic hip-hop spots in NYC, there's a tour for you. See all the classic locations with Hush Hip Hop Tours. What's up? This is Deborah from Hush Hip Hop Tours. So no matter who I interview, I always start with the same question. Do you remember the first time you heard hip-hop?
Yes, I don't remember, maybe not the first time I heard it, but I was born and raised in the Bronx, so I was right up the hill from one of the early parties. So I remember more so like the party than when I heard it, because it really wasn't on the radio or anything like that.
Who were the first few MCs that you really gravitated towards, that you really, liked above the others?
Definitely was the Cold Crush Brothers and the Fantastic Five.
I think this whole concept of the hip hop tours is such a great idea. The first time I was in New York, I remember telling my wife, we can do whatever you want, and we can go to Statue of Liberty, this, that, but I got to go to the South Bronx just so I'm there where hip hop started. So how did the idea for the tours first come up?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, like I said, I grew up in the Bronx, but I had moved down to Lower Manhattan with my family to raise my children. And it was kind of almost like I was half asleep, but not really asleep. And my subconscious, I think because I was in a heavy tourist neighborhood, I kind of saw this vision of like a tour about hip hop culture, but I actually thought it existed. I really did. And then once I started my research, I was like, a tour like this doesn't exist. It should. And that's the year that Lauryn Hill was nominated for so many Grammys that I was like, wow, there's an interest in hip hop that's way past New York or any of the urban cities for that matter. It was really, really big. So that's how the concept started. And, we put some work in, did some research, and we kind of took it from there.
So what was the first tour? Because you offer multiple tours. What was the first one you put together?
Yeah, so the first one, and the one that will always be considered the flagship, is called The Birthplace of Hip Hop. And over the years, even the tour itself, no matter what tour it is, kind of changes. The basics stay the same, but we always kind of remix it and reinvent, some of the routes and some of the points of interest, because New York City is ever changing. Like you could come here one year and a whole city block has a couple of different businesses, and then come back 2 years later and those businesses are no longer there. There's something new. So, the first 3 years of Hush Tours, anyone who took any of those tours, I'm telling you, it was loaded. They were meeting Kool Herc, they were meeting Curtis Blow, Red Alert, Grandmaster Caz. They met a lot of people on 1 4-hour tour.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So what did you have to do to get them on board, these legends that you're talking about?
Right. So, first and foremost, what I did for the business was I became a licensed sightseeing tour guide here in New York City, because I wanted to kind of learn about the industry. And I took a couple of tours. And once I experienced how they were promoting New York City, it really solidified that they were missing a mark. Not only were they not traveling to places and neighborhoods that, I wanted to take people to, but they also were not, locking down that hip hop was birthed in New York City, whether you want to say the Bronx, Queens, or whatever, we know it started in New York. Yeah. So after becoming a tour guide and creating a route, I reached out to a couple of the people who I wanted to be involved with it. And, when you say tour to anyone that's in the music industry, they think concerts, they think, traveling and performing. But it was still kind of like performing, but it was like a, more so local sightseeing. So me and my husband and I got a few people together, put them in a car, Red, Kaz, and some other pioneers, and they started talking to one another while we were doing the route. And then I turned around and I said, this is what I'm talking about. This is the tour that I'm talking about, just reminiscing and sharing your stories firsthand.
Not only is it, great for hip hop heads, my age who grew up with it, but for the younger generation to learn about some of these people that they may not know. So it's nice to, keep that alive so the kids know who built this, because without Kool Herc and, Kaz and all these people you're talking about, there would be no Nicki Minaj and whoever else is popular, Drake.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I don't want to like downplay that the other side of the reason why I really did, because it wasn't easy. Like, don't get me wrong, people coming to New York City, there's guidebooks, especially then. This is before the internet was really popular and Google and all the social media. So, I was kind of competing with Broadway and the way that New York City was promoting itself. So with that alone, we understood that we needed to remix the tourism industry. So like while I was building the company, I also was creating an industry within an industry, to get people to feel safe to go uptown, because they wanted, everything was stay in Times Square. Times Square has everything. You don't even go above 59th Street, so those were some of the challenges. But it was great, like building it and hanging out with the legends for all of those years is wonderful. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
Talk about the VIP experience. What does that all entail?
Right. So, over the years, like I said, we've had, just as the company has grown, hip hop has been growing too. So, you have people who are entering hip hop in different stages. Like you just said earlier, your entry point was Run DMC. Then you have other people whose main interest lies within dancing. Some are just graffiti artists, some are aspiring rappers. So what we do is we kind of break tours down to meet people where they are or meet them at their interest point. So if we have a group of people who are in town because they're doing some kind of dance competition and they have some downtime and they want to just kind of learn the history of hip hop dance in New York City, then we have tours for that. If a person is traveling, they want a little bit of Brooklyn and the Bronx and they don't really want to do Harlem, we can customize it that way. We do corporate tours, we do incentive tours. When businesses are visiting New York and they have, some, like they're here for a convention, but then they have some downtime because now a lot of executives are younger. So they're born into hip hop culture. Right. So these are some of the things that they want to do. And then on the family side, because, in New York and a lot of places, you have to be 21 to get into clubs. We kind of create like a little mini way for them to party without, the drinking and the atmosphere of getting inside of a bar or lounge that they're unable to do.
It is really great. People who grew up on it are now executives that, it makes me think of last week. I was going grocery shopping with my wife and we bought Cheerios and iced tea was on the box of Cheerios. And I turned to her and said, if you would have told me when I was a kid that iced tea, the OG iced tea would be on Cheerios, I never would have believed you. But it's just great, the level it's became, because I mean, when I was a fan in the mid 80s, it was still looked upon as a fad, something that wasn't going to last. And now it's the biggest music in the world.
Right. And it's involved in everything, like everything. And this is globally too, not just, locally, not within the US. We have people that most of our customers prior to COVID were international, because they have an interest level in things that sometimes we take for granted. But they don't. They like to study it. They like to get close to it. They like to come and buy up albums and, and a lot of memorabilia.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up because my daughter got married and moved to London because
congratulations.
My son-in-law is actually from the Czech Republic and whatever. It's a long story, but it gives us a good excuse to go to Europe. And one of the trips, my wife and I rented a car and drove to like 8 different European countries. And the younger generation in Europe knew more about the forefathers of hip hop than most American kids did their age. I mean, it really blew my mind how, you know, I expected them to like whatever was popular at the time, but, you know, they were talking about they're breaking and popping and, you know, graffiti and all these things that, you know, a 15-year-old in Dallas, Texas or LA isn't necessarily into. I always wonder why that is. I asked someone from England why that is, and he said kind of what you said. It's around you guys all the time, so you don't think twice about it. Here, we had to really seek it out, so it means more to us. Have you talked to anyone, you know, from Europe or other countries about how they fell in love with hip hop, or why they are more apt to go back and see the roots of it?
Yeah, you know, so for some, it's different for a lot of people. You know, we've even had couple, like a couple, and booked a tour to go to 1520 so he could propose to his longtime girlfriend. So, you know, like you have hip hop, international hip hop couples, you know, you
Yeah,
have
that's
hip
awesome.
hop babies, you know.
Mhm.
So the reason why, you know, I don't know if I've ever gotten a solid answer as to why. I just think that they feel it, you know, like they feel it and they honor it. And because of all of, and maybe like you said, access,
Mhm.
when they come to a place like New York, you know, or the US, they want to like take it all in and then take it back and maybe duplicate it. You know, some people go back there and they kind of like, you know, make it their own.
Right.
Um, so that's the only thing that I can think of, you know, and they like to collect things too. So, you know, they'll come here, buy albums and things that they don't have, they can't get there at that
Mhm.
time. Now, you know, the internet, you
Yeah.
can buy anything from anywhere, you know. Um, so, but what I do want to add is like when we first started the tour, most of our customers were returning visitors for like the third time to New York. And then as time went on, we started having people that were coming to New York to explore the birthplace of hip
Mhm.
hop, you know. So that has changed over the years too. So that's another reason why, you know, like I know what we've been doing is truly important to preserve the roots of hip hop culture, because now they, you know, even if they want to say it started here or there or do, there's about almost a million, over a million people who have taken the tour with these pioneers and heard their story, and now they know the truth. They know what it is, you know, so they can't be, their minds can't be changed or swayed.
When you talked before about some of those legends who you had, so when you first started, just name a couple who have throughout the years, you know, you've been lucky enough to have on the tour to teach these people the roots of it.
Yeah, we've had members of like the Cold Crush Brothers, almost all of the members of the Cold Crush Brothers. We've had DJ Red Alert. There's been times that on the bus we've run into people, because you know New York City is like that. You know
Yeah.
you can be doing something and you be on the bus and you see somebody, they'll jump on and share a couple of little stories quickly, like rest in peace, Lovebug Starsky, Ralph McDaniels, Johnny Famous, who's also known as Scoop Lover, one of the dancers for Big Daddy
Yeah.
Kane.
Yeah.
Um, Dana Dane, back in the days we've had, Mikey D. Some names that may not even be as renowned, but they have made their contributions, but they may not be like household names, but they also have participated as well. And a lot of dancers. So that's another thing that we do, you know, like the dancing element, you can age out of that because it's so challenging for the body. So
Yeah.
because of that, we've been able to, when we promote and include that element of hip hop culture, that's mostly where the younger age group comes in, because, you know, they're still exploring it, they're practicing it. So they are the ones who are keeping that going. Thank goodness too, because we don't want to lose any elements of hip hop culture.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't know if you've ever really thought about it. I mean, it makes nothing but sense for this tour to be in New York City, obviously. But do you think it could work in other cities? Specifically LA, I think of could possibly work. But do you see this model working on obviously a smaller scale in other cities, whether it's LA, Chicago, or Houston has a pretty big hip hop scene?
Yeah, we actually started a tour that was supposed to launch in April 2020 in Chicago. It's called Soul by the Mile, and it was inclusive of all of the music that came out of Chicago. So where one city may not have a wealth, or because of geographically it may not make sense to be driving 45 minutes to get to a point of entry. Each point of interest, if the distance is too far, it doesn't make sense. So when that happens, what we do is for Chicago in particular, we were able to include soul music, hip hop. And then unfortunately COVID hit. So we're planning on a relaunch of that, hopefully for 2023, a real launch, because it never really launched. We were just doing like promo tours, but it could happen in LA for sure.
Right.
There's a gentleman in LA that does a gang hip hop tour already that my husband and I took, and it was pretty interesting. It leaned more towards the gang culture, but it's kind of all connected. And Atlanta, that goes without saying,
Yeah,
it has
Atlanta,
enough content there. And Houston, I've never visited Houston, but I'm sure it can happen. Hook it up. Let's get going.
Take over the US, right?
Another thing I wanted to go back to, when you said like you wonder why, when you had an experience where people from other countries understand or honor or respect hip hop culture a little more, I think a lot of that falls on us as parents. Like we have to learn how to kind of introduce our children to the music that we grew up on, not to force feed it to them, but just to let them understand that, you can make a connection from Busta Rhymes, Missy Elliott, to somebody newer now that has that same energy because they stand on each other's shoulders. So, as a seniors in the culture, we can take our time and introduce it to them. That won't make them go buy it or want to download it, but at least they have heard it and they've heard the names, just like the Rolling Stones. The grandparents and the great grandkids can go to the same concert because they have already been engulfed in, like, this is the music, like this is it. We need to do the same thing.
Yeah, we should teach the youth more about that. I mean, I've always been a big proponent of keeping that alive, not forgetting, because it's really easy once we're gone for those things to kind of fall out of memory.
Absolutely. And it's not as hard as you say, it's not as hard as it may sound, because even when we have young people on a tour, right? And they, like, if we're doing a class and they never heard of Red Alert, what they can do though? What they'll do is they'll put up their phone, they'll Google it. And when they start seeing all of the credits, then they like, So, what means something to the young people hits a little different than how we would take it in, but you can find that sweet spot and then still hit them with it, and then they'll be impressed, because what impresses them is not the same thing that impressed us. Sure. That's the beauty of youth.
Right. If I could only go back. So talk about Hush TV, just kind of touch on that, how you came up with the concept.
So, a lot of things, it's kind of difficult for, like, I'm not trying to say it's in the past tense, but we're just picking up the pieces from COVID. COVID hit the tourism and travel industry in particular, everyone, but like that industry was hurt really, really bad. Like when they shutting down Broadway theater shows in New York City, then that's serious. And the subway, because that's a 24-hour shift that never shuts down. So, with the TV, what we did was, during COVID, we linked up with MTV and we did what was called Yo MTV Maps. So we combined the music videos and locations throughout the 5 boroughs. So we went to Staten Island and featured, some of the location where some famous Wu-Tang videos were shot. We did the same thing with Queens. We incorporated some younger up and coming artists. So that's something that we want to continue to do, but we're on hiatus with that right now because we're just trying to come up out of this pandemic, So the future of it, is endless. We want to actually continue doing that. And the plan is to do that concept in LA.
Yeah, I really think it could work. Because I was just on a regular tour in LA years ago, and I remember them pulling up to where the movie Colors was shot. So, I mean, you could tie that into hip hop, obviously, with Ice-T.
Right.
There's a lot of opportunity there, in my opinion. So when I talk to artists, I always ask them to tell me some crazy show stories because everyone's got a crazy show story. Do you have any crazy tour stories? Some crazy, person was on, just something that sticks out. That's a crazy story.
Oh man. Let me see. Well, one time we were doing a Queens tour, which was called Rappers Row. And it was a famous restaurant in Queens called Hollis Burgers. So when we pulled up at Hollis Burger, I saw this big bus in front of Hollis Burger. So like for me, I'm like, what's going on? It's another tour. Like now I'm on defense and I'm like a little like curious, like who is coming up to, he didn't tell, the owner didn't share with me that he had other people coming here. Long story short, we had a bus full of people. We get off the bus, we look in the store, and now the restaurant is closed. So I'm like, oh man, and they like now it's private too. We peek in, it's Snoop. It's Snoop
wow.
in there. So that was his tour bus. That wasn't like a tour bus like how we passengers. That was just his whole crew. And he was so generous with his time. He came out. I mean, we had like families from New Zealand. Sometimes she still writes an email every once in a while saying how impactful and memorable it was for her son because she was able and they were able to meet Snoop. So that was like bananas because first I was all in panic mode, but then it wound up being something, really, really special. So that's one. Oh boy. I didn't ride the bus all the time. So the guides probably have more stories than I do because they after a while, I just let them do what they did.
Sure.
I didn't need to be on the bus, but that's one for me when I was on the bus.
I also wanted to ask you, because I sometimes call myself, as I get older, I try not to, but I catch myself becoming the middle-aged, grumpy 80s b-boy when I'm hearing newer hip hop. And I try to remember, when I was a kid, all the people in their 40s thought what I was listening to was crazy. But what do you think about the current state of hip hop?
Well, I think on one hand, coming from the inception of hip hop and what I am aware of from that point, the fact that they are in charge of their business a little better and their revenue streams are not just limited to perform, like records, I'm really proud. I'm really proud to see that. Now, as far as the content of it, some of it I don't understand because I know it's not for me.
Right.
But there are some, some artists that put out music that I do enjoy. I do enjoy it no matter what. If it's good and I like it, I'm a rock with it. If it's not for me, if I don't like it, I'm not gonna say it's trash. I just feel like it's not for me. But their business and the way that they're making bread and not afraid to ask for what they need, I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, and a lot of, there's the people before them who paid the price the hard way. Because I've talked to, I just recently had an interview with Spice One, and he was talking about an album that sold 900,000 copies. And he said he made $30,000 off that album. That's it. I mean, They were just literally, just getting raped all those years. People would just, from me on the outside looking in at that time, I would have thought Spice One's got all this money, he's famous, but he got next to nothing. And I'm sure that's the same story with, hundreds of artists from that time. So that is good that could change. I totally agree.
So and because of that, it's kind of like, like the content of what, when I compare just the content to how they're positioning themselves, I kind of could understand that if they just are just in a hurry to put stuff out, or they just competing with each other to just be first to market, that part of it, the quality, I wish could be a little more diversified, and instead of always being redundant.
Mhm.
However, the fact that they on top of their money, hopefully, for the most part, that's a great thing.
So now I want to go to the second part of my interview where we just talk some hip hop shop. If you were forced to only listen to one MC for the rest of your life, who would that one MC be?
Oh my goodness. If I had to do for the rest of my life, can it be two? No, it only could be one. I would say Jay-Z.
Now, this one, people either they answer real quick or they have trouble with it. So aliens come down to Earth, and instead of blowing us up, they hear about this art form called hip hop, and they approach you, and you can only play one song to get across the message what hip hop is to someone who has no idea. What's that one song you play that embodies hip hop completely?
That is a difficult question. Like, I feel like I want to call in a favor.
Phone a friend.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. You know why it's so difficult? Because there's so many genres of hip hop that I have lived through.
Right.
But I guess, like, when you think about society and the way things are, I would have to say probably The Message, because that hasn't, some of it still remains the same, you know.
Yeah, that song does hold up. I mean, it's relevant for today as it was back in the early 80s.
Yeah.
And you're in good company. I asked that question to Chip Fu of Foosh Nickens, and that's the song he picked too. So
Oh,
great minds
good,
think
good.
alike. Okay.
Yes, good to know.
So now this is called This or That. I'm gonna give you two options. You pick the one you think is better. So we're doing albums. You got either Eric B. and Rakim's Paid in Full or Big Daddy Kane, Long Live the Kane.
Paid in Full.
Run DMC, Tougher Than Leather or Raising Hell.
Raising Hell.
Easy E's Easy Does It or NWA Straight Outta Compton.
Straight Out of Compton.
How about LL Cool J, Bad, Bigger and Deffer or Walking with a Panther?
Oh man, both of them had some bangers on it. Bad, Big and Defo.
How about A Tribe Called Quest, Low End Theory or Midnight Marauders?
Midnight Marauders.
Public Enemy, Nation of Millions or Fear of a Black Planet?
Fear of a Black Planet.
Gangstar, Hard to Earn, Pete Rock, CL Smooth, Mecca and the Soul Brother.
Oh my gosh. Pete Rock and CL Smooth.
Ooh, most people pick Gangstar. Dr. Dre's A Chronic or Snoop Doggy Style?
Oh no. I will say The Chronic.
Curtis Blow's Christmas Rapping or Run DMC Christmas in Hollis?
Christmas Rapping.
Now, Eric Sermon's solo material or as EPMD?
EPMD. Oh, not production.
I'm just talking to, yeah, as an
Just
MC.
the album. Okay.
Right. KRS-One solo or BDP?
BDP.
This is a tough one people always struggle with, but maybe you won't. Producers, Pete Rock or DJ Premier?
Oh, that's not fair. I'm not gonna be able to answer that. I'm not gonna be able to answer that one.
You're not the first one who couldn't answer it. That's tough.
No, I can't answer that. That one is that's not fair.
Even I might pick it different every week, you know.
You pick a different one every week?
Yeah, I go back and forth who I would
Right.
pick if I know it's tough. Yeah.
Exactly.
Now we're doing hood movies, East Coast, Juice or New Jack City?
New Jack City.
Now West Coast, Boys in the Hood or Menace to Society?
Sheesh. Boys in the Hood.
All right, my last part is I'm going to name an MC and just tell me the first thing that comes to mind when you hear their name. Doesn't have to just be one. Some people think I'm just looking for one word. it can be a sentence. Just what comes in your head. Oh, we were just talking about him. Ice-T.
I think of like 360, like a 360 comes to mind. Like he just went full circle.
Hey, he's done it all. I got Grandmaster Caz next.
A friend, a true friend. Yeah, friend.
And more people need to know his name. I mean, he's so talented. Even today, I mean, he's still so talented. Big L.
Oh, going too soon. Going too soon.
Yeah. Freddie Fox.
I think like bars come to mind. Bars. No, like he could rhyme. Yeah.
How about Kwame in The New Beginning?
Oh, when I think of Kwame, I think of Vivian Green, like the production he did with a song for her that I keep in rotation. So I think of his production. Yeah, that's what comes to mind for Kwame.
How about DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince?
Think of like good times, like the show that when the show. Well, I think of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Yeah, that's what I think about.
What about Kumo D?
Harlem.
Fat Boys?
Funny.
Young MC?
I wasn't really into Young MC, so I don't want to say anything.
Roxanne Shante?
Dope MC. Paved the way for a lot of females and males.
No doubt. Speaking of dope MCs, Lord Finesse.
He let me see what comes to mind without overthinking it. Just dope. Underrated.
Very underrated. Very underrated. What about Special Ed?
I got it made.
Yeah,
I got it made. I mean, all the girls back when we all was crushing on Special Ed. So I just think of like he's a cutie.
Houdini.
Yeah, they had some bangers. Like last when Houdini came out, that's when I was finally able to kind of hang out a little bit. So like I think of partying when I think of Houdini.
Two more. Third Base.
Underrated.
And finally, the Kings themselves, Run DMC.
Groundbreakers.
Absolutely. Yeah, plug your pluggables, let them know where to find you online, social media, give it all to them.
Okay. So you can find us on at hushtourscom. Our handle on social media is also at hushtours. We're just getting ready to start launching our 2022 season. So if you visit the site today and you don't see a date that you're interested in, just check back in a couple of weeks because we're going to upload our full schedule. We hope to see people in New York. Take the time, bring your children. If you can't make it to a tour, just like I said earlier, introduce the babies to the foundation of the culture. It is something that they were born into. It's part of their lives one way or another. They use it to sell all kind of products, so they might as well know where it started. And more importantly, who were the contributors of starting it.
I couldn't agree more. And next time I'm in New York, I'm absolutely taking the tour.
But like I said earlier, thank you for doing some research and stumbling across Hush Tours. This is important to me that I had the opportunity to talk to you and share some of the steps that Hush Tours has taken, and hopefully we're going to continue to grow.
Yeah. And as an old school hip hop head, I love that you're keeping, the roots alive. It means a lot to me to see that the education continue because it's easy to forget once time goes on.
For sure. We can't, people like what you're doing is just as important as what I'm doing and what we're doing here. There's so many people that exist now that are taking responsibilities, and you never know who you may touch, even if it's one person, it all counts. It all counts. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yo, Surreal the MC. Surreal the MC. Rearrange. Yo. Still a B-boy like a grade short of an A. Metaphor 3, 2, 1. Quarter to day. More to display, keep the hoarders away. Grabbing mics like cranberries with an ocean of spray. Old school like KFC, just get in the van. Streaking Snoop's Ren's hat, don't mention it, man. Head spin, back break, neck speed, pop lock, jaws drop, fresh vest, bomb squad, Hank shot. S you make no sense, what you trying to say? Pay to play, we outside just dying to play. I said play twice, though 3 times with a rhyme. Off topic again, it's the sign of the times, finally mine.
Surreal?
Me, myself, De La Soul, Bud Ice with snowballs, yo, I'm way too cold. Still a B-boy for life, till death do us part. Come back, spray paint, real fresh from the start. Still a B-boy, from the old to the new. Still a B-boy, too bold for the school. Still a B-boy, East Coast to the West. B-boys worldwide, we supposed to be blessed. Still a B-boy, from the old to the new. Still a B-boy, too bold for the school. Still a B-boy, East Coast to the West. B-boys worldwide, we supposed to be blessed.
Hey yo, AK, kick that old school flow.
Okay man, I'll take it back to 84. Remember when they said hip-hop was a fad that would last just a year or two? Well, 40 years later, we're bigger and greater. I guess that we showed you. Still miss that 80s hip-hop, the music that made me a dreamer. It had real beats, it was from the real streets, and was harder than a femur. It was a new culture for the youth, inventing as we went. We did it for the love, not to buy some bud or pay our mama's rent. Then Run DMC came along, changed the game, a whole new level. No longer underground, now earthbound, stirring things up like a dust devil.
Still a B-boy, from the old to the new. Still a B-boy, too bold for the school. Still a B-boy, East Coast to the West. B-boys worldwide, we supposed to be blessed. Still a B-boy, from the old to the new. Still a B-boy, too bold for the school. Still a B-boy, East Coast to the West. B-boys worldwide, we supposed to be blessed.
Hey yo, I got an itchy tongue, call it a trigger finger, cause it spits raps. Instead of peeling caps, I blow your dome back, so throw that whack round my way. Sit down and check this style out. Take notes but don't bite and try to eliminate my clout. I'm out for blood, hunting like a predatorial species. You couldn't beat me if you was up early and had your Wheaties. You can't see me, you blind like Stevie, to the fact that I'm still a B-boy, spitting sharp over this fire track. These new rappers whack, they need to hang it up and put it away. They freshman style wet, and I'm hanging out to dry so they gets no play. Whether it's for a radio, they need to play it low key, cause MCing for them is not the way to go. It's not what you say, but how you deliver it. So if you poetically inclined but can't articulate, it's useless. See, I do this with ease, it's like a natural born talent for me to speak on beats and get this thing straight crack.
Still a B-boy, from the old to the new. Still a B-boy, too bold for the school. Still a B-boy, East Coast to the West. B-boys worldwide, we supposed to be blessed. Still a B-boy, from the old to the new. Still a B-boy, too bold for the school. Still a B-boy, East Coast to the West. B-boys worldwide, we